HMOs can be super profitable, but only if you know what you're getting into. In this video, I'm going to share with you the real stuff that no one tells you getting into this. The good, the bad, and the expensive lessons I had to learn the hard way. I've never shared these publicly. The last one will shock you, and I still see everyone making these mistakes on their multiple HMOs, which is mind-blowing to me. I don't know how they're doing this, but anyways, lucky for you, you're watching this video. So let's get into it. So the first mistake I made was using a sourcing agent when starting my journey. And for a lot of people, you might be eager like I was to kind of get the ball rolling and get the first over line. So I met this agent who was supposed to be good at what they do in their area and sourcing deals to investors. And I was recommended by someone in the room to say, hey, this person that can help you get a deal if you want to use their services. So I was like, cool, let me explore it. And I guess at the beginning, I was very naive in terms of I just wanted to get a deal done. And this guy says he knows how to get a deal done in the area. He's got deal done for other investors. I'm like, why not? So he ended up trying to source me this deal. And what actually happened in reality was the deal that he sourced me, as we start to kind of get the numbers and start to understand what the deal is, how to create an opportunity out of this deal, it just wasn't sitting right with me. So like everything that he would say, I would challenge. And I was like, so for example, he structured the deal to have 5 bedrooms. So this is an existing HMO from a landlord who's retiring, and he was selling and wanted to exit the market. And he wanted me to take over this property and, in essence, keep it as a 5-bedroom HMO. And I'm like, yes, I could update it and make it more luxury and charge more rent and see an increase in value due to the refurb. But for me, there wasn't enough of an uplift, especially for the price point I was buying at, for it to still make sense. And so I was like, this isn't going to be a great deal if I play it out the way you want me to play it out. So I wanted to kind of push the boundaries, which was for me was to go down the route of 1, converting it into a 6-bedroom HMO, and 2, go through planning to be able to convert the house from a 6-bedroom HMO to 7-occupant property, making this house a sui generis property, allowing me to go through and get a commercial mortgage on this property to have a higher valuation property than I would have if I'd stuck to what he advised, which was to basically make a 5-bedroom HMO. He also advised me to basically convert the house in a way whereby I wasn't going back to brick. I was partially doing back to brick on parts of the house where maybe they needed more work doing. And for me, it didn't sit right with me. My long-term plan is to hold the property for 10, 15 years. Why would I just partially try and cut corners and not do full rewires and stuff like this? HMOs are high maintenance. Last thing you want is to do jobs half-heartedly, and then next thing you know, you've got issue and there's always maintenance, call-outs, charges. All these things add up over the time in which you hold the property. You definitely want to just look to do things right the first time and avoid a lot of maintenance costs happening as you hold the property. So all these things weren't sitting right with me. So like, I remember, I think at the time I signed the deal with him I probably could have pulled out. I'd ended up pulling out, but like, it just didn't make sense. I think his fee was $5,000 from memory. And I think I'd done like a source me 3 deals as a package. I was like, listen, this is not even gonna work out. I don't like the way in which you source deals, the numbers you're saying, I don't align with. I don't like the way you're structuring these deals. I think there's better opportunity to structure deals with these properties you're providing me. So personally, it wasn't making sense to me, and I wanted to basically move on and do my own thing. And again, this is one thing I teach in the mastermind. I teach people to principally understand how to find, analyze deals, how to select your investment area, how to find it, and analyze that opportunity and actually make sense of the opportunity. So go into a sourcing agent and trust them to find you a great deal. What you got to remember is the sourcing agent's motivation is to sell you a deal, right? They're there to collect their 3, 4, 5, whatever grand deal they've got to sell you, right? And you have to go and deliver on whatever they've written on a piece of paper. There's no liability for them in terms of like with the numbers they've told you. It's like, hey, this is what my opinion is, what I think you can do with it. And it's kind of feel like, hey, you the investor, here's the deal, pay my fee, and you go figure out the rest. And for me, I feel like it's just not the greatest place to start as a first-time person going into this. You definitely want to have that education to go in and understand how this works. And this is exactly what we cover within my mastermind and within my BRI HMO blueprint. And if you're interested in working with myself and joining my community where we only focus on HMOs and raising capital, there's a link in the bio where you can book a call with my team to discuss what it might look like to work with myself over 12 months, and more importantly, to make sure you're a good fit. This is not for everyone. I will say this, for me, this is not, I don't want everybody inside this mastermind. I want the right people in this mastermind. So if you've got at least 20 to 25,000 pounds around you to be able to get started and get the ball rolling, 100% book a call in and let's look at how we can help you on this. So my second mistake was furniture layout. Again, going into this, I just was very trusting of the team that I'd hired to come in and deliver on this project. I just assumed that because they've done HMO several times over, any gaps in knowledge or any gaps in kind of the process that maybe I'm not forefront and coming forward with, they would just inform me to say, hey, Alfred, we need this from you, or Alfred, this is missing. Can you please provide this data for us so we can move on with our job and do our job correctly, basically. They didn't do that. So imagine, obviously, I've hired guys who came through recommendations, I've seen their projects through other investors, and I just thought they just knew what they're doing. Quickly realized they were just kind of just trying to get through the job and get it done and move on to the next project. So when it came to financial layout, there was no plans provided to the build team regarding how we want the rooms to be laid out. And it's a big error on my part. I just assumed, even if I didn't provide it, they would just told me, Alfred, we need a financial layout plan so we know where your sockets are going to go. And so we place the sockets in the right places, and more importantly, give that plan to the electrician to make sure they're placing the sockets in the right places. So that was a big mistake, and a big lesson is you need to have the furniture layout plan provided with dimensions, and more importantly as well, not just provide it to them, but also double check that the dimensions are like what's on the plan. And more importantly, the dimensions that you put on the plan are reflecting in person. So i.e. when the electrician comes in to map out the socket location stuff, you want to double confirm that the dimensions are correct. So if you've got bedside switches by the bed, and you know the width of your bed, and you know the space in between your bed and the bedside table, you know where the socket needs to go in, so you make sure that the socket is in that region. And if it's not, then obviously you want to correct it before they start putting things in. The good thing is if you have provided a plan and things are not to that plan, you can just point the finger like, hey guys, we provide you a plan clearly stating that we want the socket from this wall to that wall 1.5 meters away from it. And if you haven't done that, then it's at their cost to fix that issue and not yours. The builders like to pass the blame and say, hey, you didn't tell me this, or this wasn't in writing, and I thought it was this, and blah, blah, blah. So you want to make sure you have it documented, everybody signed up to it, and everybody knows what is expected. So there isn't this he said, she said moment happening and disputes happening with builders. So that's a big lesson there, and hopefully you guys can avoid this mistake as well. So the third mistake I had was I didn't think about the functionality of the room. So what I mean by this is like, when you design a room, you want the room to be as user-friendly as possible. So obviously these are tenants coming into your houses. You want to make sure they're having a great experience in terms of utilizing your room. So simple things like, we first of all had a pendant light in the ceilings, which I thought, okay, maybe pendant lights in a 12-meter square room should be okay. But for me personally, I don't think it's a well lit room. Just, it's okay, but like, I guess after seeing spotlights and seeing the spotlight room HMO, I was like, okay, there's a massive difference in having spotlights versus having a pendant light, one single light bulb in the room. Yes, it's cheaper, but for me, like I said, long term, I want to have rooms that are sustainable and rent for the long term and have a better quality of living in those properties and have a better experience for my tenants who live in my properties. So like, I had these pendant lights, and if you see my old videos, you see me, the room's like pendant light. It looks good, like, it looks okay, there's nothing wrong with it, but like, for me, it just moving forward, it just wasn't something I was willing to do. And simple things like the switches. So again, quickly realized, if you see my first HMO, right, there was kind of like a hallway going into the room. And so again, the person that's living in that room, for example, would need to walk back, and let's say at night time, they want to turn the lights off, they have to walk back into that hallway, turn the light off, and go back in the dark room, back into their bed, which for me, functionally isn't great. So I didn't have no bedside switches, and you saw that moving forward, I started to put that in place for my properties, having spotlights in all the rooms, because again, it just made the room look way more lit and just looks like a better room just because of lights. It's just crazy, right? Just little things like this. Also, just the whole full process of like, how is the room actually going to be used? Like, what's the placement of the bed versus the furniture in the room, the tables, the desk, the TV, like all that kind of stuff. Like, just these are simple things, but it's just thinking about when someone comes into this room, how does this flow? Like, what is the space around these things, and does it make sense? And can you see someone utilizing this? So, for example, if you've not done your furniture layout like what I said I didn't do, and you've got your wardrobe hitting on your bed because there's no space and you're trying to cram everything in, then again, it's not functional for the person that's living in that room. And so you want to make sure you're thinking about the functionality of these rooms and providing the best experience for your tenants. So long term, these rooms are rooms that are desirable and will always rent. So again, big lesson there is to have in mind the functionality of the room for your user experience, which are your tenants. So my fourth mistake, believe it or not, was I did not plan ahead in terms of getting my build team selected. It was a tough time because COVID was happening. There's a lot of changes happening. But either way, I think whether COVID or not COVID, I still had this problem. Was I was eager to obviously get a property over the line. That was the main focus. And again, that's what happened when you're doing your first deal. You're kind of focused on the legals, the conveyancing to get a deal and a purchase over the line. But you forget that the next step in the dance is to have a build team start when the keys are collected. So I was rushing around trying to find build teams. And obviously, if you know, good build teams are not readily available. You have to have them planned in advance. So before you even start going to your viewings and stuff, you want to start looking for your builders. You want to find a build team in the area that potentially you can work with, because the purchase process takes 3 to 4 months, let's say 2 to 3 months on average, but in reality, sometimes it's 3 months and above. And so you're lining up your build team to be aware that, okay, you are an investor they potentially want to work with, and there's a property coming for them to be able to refurb in this time of duration, so they can allocate a slot for you to be able to take over your project when you purchase it. If not, you're left with the best of a bad bunch, which is not a great place to be, because builders are probably, for me, is the highest risk when it comes to delivering on a HMO project. So if you're going with the best of the bad bunch, then again, you're not setting yourself up to win, right? So big lesson here is, do not leave the builder finding to a last minute. And also, in my case as well, another thing I guess I learned off the back of that is, do not hire a build team who isn't locally in the investment area. So the caveat here is, if the builder lives maybe, and his team lives maybe in another neighboring town, but they actually have their main work in the town that you invest in, that's fine. It's if they live in a complete different town and have jobs in a complete different town, but they're taking on the project in your town as a one-off to help you get your project over the line. That is not a place you want to be. Because what was happening with me is, I selected builders who lived in Birmingham, and my project was based in Coventry. They didn't really have Coventry projects going on all the time. They just were lacking projects in Birmingham all the time, and they thought, okay, well, I could potentially do the project in Coventry and cover it. And as we got towards the latter stage of my project, started to realize there was lack of resource available in my project, because they now got more projects back in Birmingham, and now it's their base. So they were focusing, spending time more in Birmingham, which obviously impacted my projects, right? So you definitely don't want to select builders that are not locally in that investment and live in that investment area, or at least have that investment area as their main patch where they do their jobs. Not to say builders can't be in multiple in different cities, they can. It's just if the capacity is there, if those are their main playing grounds. Because if it's not, chances are that they have to take the resource to site. And this is another thing, right? The builder has to take their team onto site, and if they've got projects elsewhere, they're not going to be taking them to site. They're prioritizing their main ground, which is where they currently do their work. So keep that in mind. You want to find a build team that is locally in that investment area to allow you to, again, see a better result when it comes to build works being done for your properties. So big lesson there. Do not leave a builder to last minute to try and find them. You'll be selecting from a bad bunch, which you don't want to be doing. All right, so the last and final mistake I want to share that I made at the beginning was, I did not do a red book valuation. And it might sound crazy in my mind now that how I didn't even think about that at the time, or even didn't come across it at the time. So I see a lot of investors, even sometimes even experienced investors, still make this mistake where they're buying houses, they're renovating these houses and hoping that they get these valuations on the back end, which is crazy to me. I did that once and said, this does not make sense. I am not risking all this money, especially the fact that I'm borrowing investor money, not knowing and having this uncertainty around my end valuations. Because again, at the front end, when I did it for the first time, I realized this doesn't make sense. Why am I buying a house, spending 100 odd grand renovating, hoping, quote unquote, hoping, based on my research data or whatever you want to tell me, that I get this valuation? In reality, valuation is someone's opinion. I can't predict someone's opinion. So I'm not, you can play that game if you want to play that game, but I've gamified this process to ensure I never ever experience a down valuation. And I've never, since my first project, ever not had a red book valuation in place. I've always had one in place because it makes sense. It secures my investment in terms of what I'm buying it for, what I'm spending on the refurb, and what my end valuations. I just know all these numbers day one before I even commit to buying the property. For me, that's the wisest thing you can do. So if you're not aware what red book valuations are, you want to speak to a broker to help you understand what that is and how to get that in place to make sure that you are securing your investments when you're making these investments. And one thing I also add is, like, it's not just about getting a red book valuation. There's obviously a play to how we gamify this process. And again, this is a big part that we talk within the mastermind, just to ensure that people aren't getting down valuations. There is a way in which we make sure that we aren't going in and on the back end having a different number come out. We are guaranteeing ourselves that we go in on the front end and we have this number come out on the back end. And if, for example, there is an increase in cost, we can now make a more informed decision on whether we spend that extra money, because we know what our end value, which is a fixed number. We're going to either be there on that number, maybe slightly higher based on the end finish of the property. But generally speaking, you're going to be on that number. So you can now make an informed decision. Imagine the guys who are not doing red book valuations on their projects and are just going in blind, hoping that they get this number. And the builder says, hey, we're going to spend 10, 15 grand. What if you get down val? So let's say you thought you're going to get 500 grand, your revaluation came back at I don't know, 475, and you spend an extra 15 grand thinking you're gonna get 500 grand, and actually you didn't, and now you've lost another 15 grand, you just lost money. You're down to 450. So you're 50 grand off from where you thought you'd be. That's a horrible place to be, especially if you're already leaving money in the deal as well. Like, you don't want to be in this place, and this is why for me education is super important. Everyone thinks they can go and do this by themselves, but like property, if you get it wrong, can be very painful and can be a lasting experience of you not wanting to do this again. You just wasn't educated. You didn't have the right people around you to inform you how to do this correctly.